Hey everyone, I'm here again with Casey Hardaway, who is the Southwest Regional Educator with the Arkansas Game and Fish Commission. And this is part of an ongoing monthly series with Game and Fish. And today's episode is all about turkeys. So Miss Casey here is going to talk turkeys and we're going to listen turkeys. So welcome again, Casey.
Hey, Paul, it's so good to be back with you guys. I'm excited to talk about turkeys. Today is actually the youth turkey hunting season. So I hope you got a chance to get out there with your kiddos and harvest a turkey this morning if you're watching. All right, well, I will jump right into my slide. There we go. So this beautiful illustration here is the Wild Turkey Conservation Stamp. And if you're watching today, I'm guessing it's because you care about turkeys. And if you care about turkeys and you want to make a little small donation and receive a beautiful stamp, a great way to do that is to go to agfc.com/buy license, and you can buy this voluntary turkey stamp. This is not what's required before you go hunting. When you purchase your combination sportsman license, you get your 2 turkey tags on that. This is just a voluntary, anybody can buy it. It helps. That money goes directly to turkey habitat. Just in this past year, the turkey coordinator for the state of Arkansas was able to dedicate $100,000 from the sale of these stamps to direct habitat management. And one of those projects was even on, I believe it was DeGray Lake. So right there in this neck of the woods. It's a really great program. And it's a beautiful stamp. You might want to consider checking it out. So turkeys, my gosh, they're just the weirdest thing. What even is a turkey? It's such a big bird. It's a dinosaur, right? If you've ever gotten close to one, that might be how you felt. And you wouldn't be too far off base. Turkey fossils go back 5 million years. So they absolutely are big dinosaur birds. What you need to know about turkey anatomy is that they can see and hear really, really well. They've got eyes on the side of their head, and they can turn their head. They've got 360-degree vision, and their eyes are kind of weird. So they have these flattened corneas, so they can't see color just real great. But what they can do is pick up on movement very, very quickly. So if you're a turkey hunter, you've got to be really well camouflaged. You've got to be perfectly still. You've got to time your movements, use your turkey calls, knowing that turkey might see you and bail. Their hearing is also phenomenal. So they can hear low frequency sounds at an incredibly great distance. We can't even imagine what their hearing is like. And on top of that, they're kind of beautiful birds because of their feathers, and kind of weird looking birds as well. So they've got all this face flappy stuff going on. They've got that snood that hangs down over their bill, and they've got these big ugly caruncles where like a chicken would have like a comb and a wattle. A turkey has a snood and caruncles. Turkeys have beards and several other little features that we can take a look at as we go. You might not be aware, but turkeys can fly. Domesticated turkeys typically can't. They can fly up into a roost. And even though they're genetically the same, they're the descendants of wild turkeys. They've lost their ability to fly. They get too fat. But wild turkeys absolutely can. I've seen one clear a 35-acre lake and keep going. Turkeys frequently clear a football field. And in fact, turkeys can also swim when they need to. It's not their favorite thing to do, but turkeys have been seen swimming. Turkeys' bodies are covered with 5,000 or 6,000 feathers. It's a lot. They're really beautiful iridescent feathers. And as with other bird species, the bright color and that iridescence, that indicates the bird's health on the molecular level. So if you're wondering why all those feathers are so shiny, it's just about those boy turkeys being prettier. Being prettier just kind of proves that they can find more food. They're probably stronger, can fly further, and they typically have better reproductive success. So that's what a turkey's feathers, that's the message they're sending. Some quick facts and terminology. So when we're talking about a gobbler is an adult male turkey. A hen is an adult female. A jake is a juvenile male. So if it's a male turkey that's, He can be just as big as a gobbler, but if he's not quite 2 years old yet, we classify that as a jake. Same for a jenny, that's the juvenile female. A very young turkey up to 4 weeks of age is called a poult, and a group of young poults is the brood. So the hen will have a nest, and then she'll need some brooding habitat to raise her young when they're very small. And a group of turkeys is sometimes called a rafter, but you can just call it a flock because that makes more sense to me. Now, turkeys can live as long as 9 to 14 years, but the average lifespan is only 2 years. And that's probably because turkeys are delicious. So you just kind of average all the turkeys that are taken by predators or by hunters, and on average, you get a 2-year lifespan. And also when you're factoring in a lot of turkeys die very young, like while they are poults, and so that drops the average as well. Turkeys, they lay nests of 10 to 12 eggs, kind of like chickens. They will re-nest after an early nest loss, and that's important because it's about to be turkey breeding season right now, and a hen can be bred, and she can go out and lay her eggs, and if something happens to that nest and it's damaged, she's still fertilized, and she can go out and lay another nest within a certain period of time. So that's good to know. Turkeys also roost in trees, except for the hens. They roost on the ground while they're incubating their eggs and for a couple of weeks after the poults hatch. But other than that, big sleepy turkeys, they're hanging out in trees. If you've ever had backyard chickens and observed your chickens roost in a tree, it's kind of the same process. It starts getting dark and they fly up there to keep themselves safe from predators. So it's important to be able to tell a tom turkey, a gobbler, apart from a hen. If you've done any bird watching at all, you've trained your eyes to kind of pick up on those differences between males and females. As with other bird species, the males are more colorful, bigger, showier, and the hens, the females, are kind of a dullish brown. But for hunting purposes, you don't want to be mistaken because it is illegal in Arkansas to harvest a hen. So a legal turkey is going to be an adult gobbler only, unless you're a youth hunter between the ages of 6 and 15. Even then, you can't harvest a hen, but you can harvest a jake, one of those juvenile males. A few ways to tell the difference between the males and females. If you can't tell by the obvious things, which is going to be the size, your females are half the size of your males. They've got that buff, duller color. You can also look at the head. So a tom or a gobbler turkey has a really bright, colorful head, red, white, and blue. Those red caruncles, that blue and white head with hardly any feathers on it. That's also why you don't wear red, white, and blue this time of year during turkey season. If you're walking around out in the turkey woods, you don't want to alert a trigger-happy hunter that you might be a turkey. And that female turkey, she's got a bluish head that's got way more feathers on it, giving her that buff appearance. Also, female turkeys can have a beard. It's about 10 to 12% of female turkeys have beards, but they're typically less than 6 inches long. And a gobbler, a full-grown male turkey, will have a more than 6-inch long beard. And spurs, you're not really looking at spurs on a hen. They're more typical of a gobbler, and they're going to be more than a 1/2 inch long on him. Let's see. Yeah, spurs absent. Lost my clicker. Here's a picture of a feather from a hen. So hens and jennies have brown or buff tip feathers. Again, that head is bluish gray, and they're only going to weigh between 8 and 12 pounds. And this is a feather from a male. It's black tipped. It's got much more of that iridescent color on it. He's got that much more colorful head, and he's much larger than the female. But you also, if you want to take a legal bird, you need to know the difference between a jake and a gobbler. And it's not always obvious. As you can see in these two pictures, they're roughly the same size. A jake is juvenile, but he's catching up to the older males in his rafter. But one of the things that stands out even from a distance is if the tail feathers are fanned, you can see that the feathers in the middle are longer than all the rest of the feathers in that fan. And that has to do with molting. So, all birds molt. Turkeys go through 5 molts throughout their life. And they're like little kids that start losing their baby teeth. They start in the middle, and it's the same way with those turkey feathers. They start losing their baby feathers there in the middle, and it works towards the outside. I'm sorry about that. But eventually, after 2 years of age, all of those feathers will have fallen and they'll all be the adult size. Some other differences you might be able to see, the picture of the wing. The wing feathers on an adult turkey will have the white bars all the way down to the tip, but a jake, that the white bars stop so that those primary wing feathers have a black tip on them. Also, the jake is going to have a shorter beard, less than 6 inches, and his spurs are not going to be super developed yet. So females, they go through that same process, but like other female birds, their feathers tend to be duller in color. Here's a hen, 3 hens with some poults, and all of those poults are part of this brood. And brood success, that's a big factor in turkey populations. And brood habitat is one of the biggest concerns for land managers. So those young turkeys, they're delicious and they're vulnerable, and ensuring that they have the right habitat is something that those of us who care about turkeys need to be thinking about. So I'll give you a second to look at these 2 pictures and see if you can tell what is going on. It might jump out at you that the poult in the pictures on the right has his feathers all fluffed up. Like, what is he doing? And then you look over at the picture on the left, and you've got like 4 birds, 4 mature birds. They're all feather puffed up, tail fans spread out, and that's called strutting behavior. Now, strutting is typically associated with male turkeys. This is the time of year where turkey hunters are listening for that gobble, and I won't do my impression of it, but if you're interested in hearing a turkey gobble, you can go to allaboutbirds.com and search for wild turkeys, and they have some good recordings of turkey gobbles and some fun turkey facts you can read. But strutting and gobbling are typically associated with an adult male behavior. But here in these photographs, we have some poults also strutting. And in this one, a female out there with the 2 males, and she is strutting. But you can see that she's much smaller. She's about half of the size of those toms, but she's still giving it a go. We don't really know why. Strutting and gobbling are thought to be sexual behaviors, but the fact that this female is doing it too could mean that strutting means something else to birds, and we haven't figured it out yet. But all of this is just a fun little bit of trivia that I got from the Turkey Tuesdays publication by Dr. Michael Chamberlain. Every Tuesday on Facebook, he posts a fun Turkey Tuesday fact, and this was his most recent one. So if you're looking to learn more about turkeys, I encourage you to follow Dr. Chamberlain. He's got some cool stuff to teach you. Now, the history of turkeys in Arkansas follows kind of the same trajectory that a lot of wildlife has followed, which is that before European settlement, populations were abundant. I mean, Arkansas was so rich in natural resources with the most amazing abundance of wildlife that really drew people to this state. But what that means is that, the settlers were getting here before the rule of law had time to catch up. And so in the early 1900s and before, market hunting decimated wildlife populations, including turkey populations. In fact, wild turkeys were one of the first species of wildlife to be on the radar of conservationists in Arkansas. And so, Game and Fish didn't come around until around 1915, and that's when we saw the first regulations like seasons, turkey seasons, and bag limits to help protect turkeys. So, if you haven't heard me say this before, market hunting is where you just take as much wildlife as you can and you sell it at the market. And we don't do that anymore. Nowadays, we hunt for personal use. We have bag limits that are designed to so that we can harvest an animal and use it to feed our families, but not necessarily to sell to the market as it was back then. And so these bag limits and these regulations ensure that there's enough wildlife for everybody to utilize and enjoy and feed their families. And so you've got those first regulations being put into practice when it was kind of too late. Turkey populations were already just decimated from overhunting. And so by the time 1940 rolled around, there were fewer than 7,000 turkeys left in the entire state of Arkansas. That's not very many at all. And so over the next 60 years, the Game and Fish Commission made efforts to go out and catch wild turkeys in other states where their populations were doing a little bit better and releasing them in Arkansas. And while they were doing this catch and release over that 60-year period, they would, close hunting in places where these released birds had been let go. And the reason for that was to give the birds time to adjust, to produce offspring. Before they did this catch and release thing, Game and Fish tried releasing domesticated birds into the wild, farm-raised birds, farm-bred wild turkeys, and none of that worked very well. Once you have an animal being farmed and raised, it just doesn't do well when you let it go in the wild. And so, but they did have success with this catching wild mature birds in other states and releasing them in Arkansas, and just shutting down hunting temporarily until those birds had a chance to be established. And then by the time 1990 rolled around, there were 200,000 turkeys in the state, and that's a really good number for us. In fact, so from 1990 to about 2003, that population of turkeys, it kept steadily increasing. And along with that population increase, we had harvest increase. So 2003, that was the peak of turkey populations and the peak of harvest. And so it looked like we had gotten it all figured out, the amount of hunting that we could allow and encourage that could support our turkey populations so that they would be plentiful and produce a surplus. But as you can see, since 2003, populations have been declining ever since then, just slowly and steadily. And what gives? So, we know back in the earlier days of Arkansas, it was hunting pressure that took a toll on turkey populations. And it might make sense to blame hunting for the condition of turkey populations today, but not when you look at the data. So I want you to ask yourself, is hunting pressure really playing a role in these decreasing populations? Well, we can look at some data from last year's spring harvest report, and I've got a little QR code on there. If you want to pause the video and scan that, it'll take you to a more detailed version of this report if you want to read everything that Jeremy Wood laid out. He's our statewide turkey coordinator. But basically, last year we had a 21-day turkey season. It lasted from April 19th to May 19th to May 9th. And that's kind of what we're going to do again this year. The youth season last year was April 10th, 10th and 11th. This year it was the 9th and 10th. So all in all, last year, hunters checked 7,013 turkeys, which was an 18% decrease from 2020. And there's lots of things that can explain that. Like 2020 was our COVID year. We haven't forgotten that, I'm sure. But a lot of people went out and enjoyed the outdoors for the first time, or to a greater extent than they had in the past, because they were tired of being cooped up in their houses. So there was a lot more boating, like we talked about last month. Boating accidents went up in 2020. And there was also a lot more turkey hunters out there in the woods in 2020. So that was an artificially high year. And then But even so, last year, the 2020 harvest of 7,013 birds, that was still kind of low because it was 15% down from 2019. And 2019 was a normal pre-COVID year. And youth hunters checked 821 turkeys last year. So, oh wait, I forgot to mention something. All right, so there's a couple of red lines on here. We have in 2011 the no Jake rule. So basically, what all this data is telling us is that hunting pressure is not really playing a big role in turkey populations. And we can see that because there was a time before Jeremy Woods came on as our turkey program coordinator that it was thought that we're putting too much hunting pressure on jakes. Remember those juvenile male turkeys? And maybe if we just took them off the plate, made it illegal to harvest jakes, turkey populations would bounce back up. And you can see it kind of looks like it looked like that a little bit, like populations and harvests were going to go up after we took jakes off the plate and didn't let anybody except for youth hunters harvest a jake. But then leveled out and dropped back down, and we're still back to that declining population, which is sad. So all of this is to say that there are a lot of factors that go into this, and yes, taking some hunting pressure off of turkeys can help give them a chance, especially during certain times of the year. That's why the season has been shortened. But really, there are other factors. And so if it's not so much hunters, or at least not hunters alone, we're left to wonder, are predators the problem? Natural predators. Well, I have something to say about that, and you might not like what you hear, but way back in fourth grade, we all learned that predators are an important part of the food chain, right? So you have prey species like turkey, and they evolved to coexist with the predators that are natural to this area. And predation always has been, and probably always will be, the number one cause of poult death, the baby turkey death, and the nest loss. And looking at this situation from that simplified food chain perspective, it makes total intuitive sense that if you remove the predators from the equation, then the prey species will become more abundant, right? Every fourth grader can tell you that, and they can tell you why that could be a good thing and why it could be a bad thing to have prey species populations increase. But we also have to consider in the real world, there are a lot of factors to put into that equation. And you have to ask yourself, is it possible to remove all of a turkey's predators? And the answer is no, it is not possible, because turkeys are delicious and everything wants to eat them. But it's also not legal. So take, for example, the great horned owl. He happens to be the number one predator of roosting turkeys. And we were actually going to do this turkey talk on Super Bowl Sunday, and I wanted to wish you all a superb owl Sunday, and I didn't get to make that joke, so I'm making it now. But the great horned owl is the superb owl. He can take out a really big bird like a turkey. So they're the biggest predator of turkeys, and that's a predator that you're not going to remove from the environment because owls are protected, right? They're a protected raptor, just like bald eagles and falcons and all these other beloved birds. Nobody wants to hurt an owl, but if you wanted to remove all of a turkey's predators, that would be one of them that you would have to consider. And you also don't want to do that because great horned owls are the only natural predator of skunks, because they don't have a great sense of smell. And so if you've got your owls out there playing their part in the food web, the owl eats the skunk doesn't raid the nest. Again, if you've ever raised chickens, you know how much of a pain skunks can be as far as eating nests and damaging birds. But they're not the only nest eaters around there. Do you think that coyotes eat skunks? Absolutely not. Like all dogs, coyotes have a great sense of smell, and they likely won't target a skunk as a meal. Now, coyotes get a really bad rap for eating fawns and eggs and turkeys and a lot of other game species that we would like to see their populations increase. But and they're also a lot of fun to hunt. I'm not gonna lie, it's fun to go coyote hunting, but you have to ask yourself, could you ever make a dent in the coyote population? And if you're a coyote hunter, you're probably, yeah, I've made a dent. And the truth is, it's just not likely. Coyotes respond to hunting pressure by having more babies. Their population might dip for a year or two, but it's going to bounce back. Another thing that coyotes do is spread out. So if you do manage to get coyote populations down on your property, without competing coyotes, you'll just have some move in from a neighboring property. They'll fill the void that was left when you thinned your coyote herd. And plus, when you take coyotes out of the equation, you get an explosion of the secondary predators like possums and snakes that prey on turkey nests. And so having like a healthy amount of coyotes can actually be a good part of this food web that turkeys evolved to coexist with. So all of that is just to kind of throw a different perspective out there. But I don't want to lose sight of the fact that, yes, predator control is very important. Please continue hunting predators and trapping predators. It's important for the environment, as so much habitat has been lost. We just can't, we would be overrun with predators without predator control measures being taken. And predator control, it does play a role in turkey management. But as a landowner, if you're gonna do predator control, keep the big picture in mind and don't hesitate to reach out to your private lands biologist who can advise you on some of the best ways to practice predator control. Now, all of those other predators got nothing on this guy, the feral hog of Arkansas. Yeah, I don't even know what to say about him. He will raid a nest, outcompetes so many other wildlife species for habitat. Controlling feral hog populations is incredibly important. And again, you can reach out to Game and Fish or USDA for help with trapping and removing feral hogs from your property. The turkeys in the area will thank you. So now we're left with the question, if not so much hunters, if they're just kind of a small part of the equation, and if predators are also kind of a small part of the equation, then that leaves one thing. The big part of the turkey population equation is habitat. So rather than limiting harvest or predation, we can limit harvest during nesting seasons. Again, you can consult with an expert. Game and Fish has private lands biologists who can help you talk through your predator management strategy. And something else those guys can do is they can come out and help you make decisions about providing turkey habitat. This is our number one thing. So we go back to the 1900s to when market hunting, unregulated hunting was decimating wildlife populations, but that was also paving the way for massive habitat loss across the state, which continues even today to just grow and grow and grow. You might think that, there was this big boom of development back in the earlier part of the century, but that's not the case. We're still continuing to build housing. Our farming and agriculture strategies have become more and more precise, where we're using up every square inch of land and not leaving any wild habitat behind. So yeah, that continues to be a problem. Habitat loss is the big threat today that market hunting was in a century ago. So as we keep an eye on turkey habitat, we want to be mindful of places that provide winter food sources, spring nesting, summer brood rearing, and fall forage. We also want to pray for little precipitation during nesting. The weather is beyond our control, and it probably is the biggest factor in turkey populations as far as all of this goes. And the only way we can, balance out the negative effects the weather has is by having tons of good habitat on the ground. It's also worth noting that good habitat that is fragmented is lacking connectivity. So you can do all the habitat restoration you want on your land, and it's not going to have a great effect unless you get your neighbors on board. So talk to your neighbors and the other people in your area to try to reduce that fragmentation and have lots of good habitat closely connected. So late winter, early spring, that's the time of year we're getting into. And I even see some familiar redbuds and rose vervain blooming in this photograph. So you might be seeing some of the same habitat when you go on your walks outside. But this is that time of year where turkeys begin transitioning from fall winter home ranges to their spring and summer range. So they've got like different places where they stay close to. And this is another thing that you can learn from the Turkey Tuesdays on Dr. Chamberlain's Facebook page. He tracks turkeys, and so he gets a really good idea of where their winter ranges is versus their summer ranges, and you can actually see some of the images he puts out to the public on where turkeys are moving to. But they're following food sources because their food changes from winter to summer. Now, throughout the winter, they were kind of in sex segregated flocks, where females would travel together and males would travel together. But this time of year, those flocks break up and the males begin to intermingle with the females, and breeding activity is ramping up. Males gobble and females will go to the gobbler. That's why he's crying his little heart out. Little to no breeding activity is accomplished by jakes, before they're 2 years of age. They just don't have much success. But Jenny's, a female juvenile hen, she might be successfully bred, but her brood doesn't usually survive. So she's not as experienced as an older female. So after breeding, you'll get into that nesting period. And nesting habitat is so important to turkeys. And these are a couple of really nice photographs where you can see some good nesting habitat. So once a hen is bred, she starts to lay eggs within a couple of days, and she'll lay one egg each day for 12 days if she's going to lay a dozen. Sometimes she'll skip a day, and it might take her 14 to lay the entire clutch. But ultimately, she'll have between 10 and 12 eggs on average. And once she completes that laying process, she'll begin continuous incubation where she's setting on those eggs. She'll only leave the nest for a short period of time to relieve herself and find some food. And otherwise, she's going to stay there on that nest for 26, 27, 28 days until they all hatch. Now, while she is incubating those eggs, she is extremely vulnerable to predation. So we talked about some predator control. This is the time of year when predators are especially dangerous to hens. Hen mortality is highest this time of year in the spring to early summer than any other time. Now, you've got to think about how vulnerable she is sitting on those eggs. She can't go anywhere. She risks losing them. So she's going to choose a nesting site that has pretty considerable lateral cover. So that's, that vegetation that grows up to a meter high that protects her from the sides, and some light overhead cover. So thin, sparse trees. And the reason she picks it out like that is she wants to be concealed from predators by all that vegetation, kind of like how the eggs in this photo are concealed. You would have to be pretty observant to notice those. But she also wants to be able to see a really long way. So it's this balance between hiding her and her eggs while she's sitting down. And also, if she stretches her neck up and does a scan of her surroundings, she wants to be able to see a predator coming from a long ways off, so she can take action before she gets eaten. Hens also typically build a nest that is pretty close to within 30 meters of some kind of opening. That could be a road, like an open field, a power line, some kind of edge with an opening. So she needs good habitat in a couple of different kinds of cover right there in the area where she is spending her time. And the way you can get that kind of habitat is forest thinning. We see a lot of overly thick pine forests, and then all of a sudden you do a clear cut, and that's surprisingly good brood rearing habitat. But you can have your trees and thin out the less beneficial ones and keep your healthy, your wildlife beneficial trees and create some much improved habitat for turkeys. Also, or prescribed burning, prescribed fire helps build the kind of habitat. It clears out some of the thatch and the woody stuff that you don't want, and allows some of the forbs and the herbaceous stuff that gives her the right kind of cover, allows those things to grow. And it's also going to make the plant life more friendly to insects, so that those babies have plenty to eat when they hatch. So yeah, once the nest hatches, like I said earlier, that the hen, she's going to roost on the ground for 2 weeks. So she's still vulnerable even after the eggs hatch. This is also when poult mortality is the highest. So when they're little and defenseless and when they're sleeping on the ground. But after about 4 weeks of age, when the poults get to be about 4 weeks old, they'll be able to start taking cover better and have a little bit better chance of survival. Now, brood habitat, while she's raising those littles, this is the thing that is the most limited in Arkansas. Jeremy says that this is the kind of habitat we really need to work on if we ever hope to get our turkey populations back up. We have some of this in the bottomland forests in the Delta, but in other places, it's just not available. So these areas are characterized by the vegetation, like you can see in this picture, that's 1 to 3 feet tall, and it's not overly dense. So that's the important thing, is that it allows the poults to walk through it, and they've got this bare dirt that they can walk through, and it covers them from above, but it's not slowing their little feet down, and they're catching lots of insects. There's plenty of bugs in there for them to eat. Hens can see out over the top of the vegetation and keep a lookout for predators. Ideally, these areas are in close proximity to the other habitat types they need, so that they can flee to a thicker area to escape cover, or flee to an area with escape cover and avoid predators if they're detected. These areas are just rich in insects, and I think about little birds like little kids. When they're little, they need protein-rich diets, kind of like a toddler is going to eat chicken nuggets and hot dogs. Little birds eat lots of bugs, and then as they get older, they switch to salads, kind of like me. They're eating more of the grass and the seeds and the things like that. All right. Summer, as the summer wanes, birds once again start to form those small fall flocks. They're the several different kinds of flocks. So you're going to have like your brood flocks, which are mostly related individual, the young with the hens. It could be hen flocks, where it's just a group of females. And then gobbler flocks, where all those toms are hanging out in a little bachelor group. Birds begin to transition from the summer range into their fall-winter range, again, to take advantage of the changing food availability. So turkeys need several different types of habitat, and it all has to be pretty close together where they can travel it and navigate it. And the way you get that, we've learned in recent years, is through prescribed fire. So we've been getting tons of prescribed fires down on public land all across Arkansas. In the past, people have been real hesitant. Fire can be scary. There can be complaints with the smoke. But the more and more research that is done, the more we know that it absolutely takes fire to manage the habitat the way wildlife in Arkansas need it. They evolved alongside of fire, frequent fire, probably more frequent than we realized in recent years. And then you might be asking yourself, well, if turkeys lay their nests on the ground, wouldn't a fire come through and burn it up? Well, we know through research that Fewer than 6% of turkey nests are even touched by fire. And like I said earlier, if a turkey loses her first nest, she's still fertilized and she can lay another nest. So after that fire goes through, it's probably improved the habitat for her, and she can choose a location either very close to or in the exact same spot where she had her original nest, and try again and be more successful with the improved habitat that fires bring. Growing season fires, we used to avoid these between August and November, but they do the best job of controlling woody vegetation. So they help put sunlight on the ground. They promote the herbaceous plants that turkeys need for that just right kind of cover, and they promote the nesting and foraging habitat types. And so I got to participate in a prescribed burn recently after taking a Learn to Burn class that was taught by some game and fish private lands biologists. And if you're interested in learning this or just getting some personalized information from your private lands biologist, if you're in Garland County, that's Wes Tucker. He's a really nice guy. He knows a lot. He's wonderful. And his contact information is here. If you're not in Garland County, if you're watching from somewhere else, you can go to agfc.com and search for the private lands program and look up your biologist by region. I'm down here in Hempstead County, and our PLB is Ricky Chastain, and he is the smartest, wisest, most wonderful man. He's the one who taught my Learn to Burn class, and he's a lot of fun. These guys are a wealth of knowledge, and they want to come out and see your land and help advise you on all those different issues, whether it's help you get started with a burn and a habitat restoration project, maybe advise you on some predator control methods that you should take into consideration. These guys are a wealth of knowledge, and they can really give you that personalized experience. And another place to go for more information, I mentioned earlier, Dr. Michael Chamberlain's Turkey Tuesdays are a lot of fun. But here in Arkansas, there's the AGFC Private Lands Program Facebook group. This is a group for landowners to learn about how to manage their property for wildlife. And this is really important because nearly 90% of Arkansas's land is privately owned. We're doing tons of controlled burns on public land where we're able to, but we need to get more fire and more good habitat on private lands as well. And this is a good first step resource. Maybe before you call your PLB, you can join this group and, observe from a distance if you're nervous about it. Also, go ahead and join this group today, because later on this week, Jeremy Wood, the Arkansas Turkey Program Coordinator, is going to be broadcasting another talk about turkey. So if you want to learn more about turkeys than what I had to offer today, you'll have an opportunity to tune into that virtual program through this page. And also, don't forget to check out Arkansas Game and Fish Commission's YouTube page. Jeremy has a talk from last year about turkeys. There's also just all kinds of cool stuff on there. They have one about alligators, and we're going to be talking about alligators next month. So go ahead and watch that and get ready for the next time we do this. All right, that's what I have, Paul.
All right. Well, that was extremely informative. I would never have guessed how fascinating turkeys are, and that makes me wish we were having these programs more than once a month, and we could just go over every species in Arkansas.
You could spend a month talking about turkeys. They're pretty fascinating.
Well, I have, if you're willing, a little quiz for you.
Ooh.
And if you get 5 questions right, you get to call yourself the Arkansas Turkey Queen.
Oh, I'm excited. Let me hear them.
Don't get 5 right. We have to hear your impression of a turkey gobble.
Oh, no. The pressure's on. I can't do that. Okay.
All right. Well, question number 1. What country has the largest turkey population?
Oh, that would have to be us.
You're right.
The wild turkey population.
It is the United States. I gave you a softball to start with.
Thank you. Okay, so that's interesting because domestic turkeys were transported across the ocean back to Europe, and then brought back to North America when some of the first settlers arrived. So turkeys have a weird history in this country, but yeah, we're where they're native to. Anyways, I'm ready for number 2.
All right. While it was done inconsistently prior to this president, which president made it an annual tradition to pardon the Thanksgiving White House turkey?
Oh no. Inconsistently.
There was one president who made it a formal ceremony every year.
I mean, I could see Teddy Roosevelt doing it, and I can't think of anybody
I'll
else.
give you a hint. It's more recent.
More recent?
Yeah.
Made it a formal tradition. I need another hint, like within my lifetime or before my lifetime.
Within our lifetimes, maybe just barely, but within our lifetime.
I'm Bill Clinton.
No, you're one off. It was H.W. Bush.
Oh, really? That makes me like him even more. Oh, except that I have to do a turkey call now.
Right, you have one right. Okay. In bowling, what impressive move is called a turkey? In the sport of bowling.
Sport of bowling. There's a turkey. Is that where you knock them all down but one?
Oh,
I have no idea.
3 consecutive strikes in a row.
That's called a turkey?
Apparently. I don't know why. But here is a fun fact. Apparently, turkey bowling is a thing, and it's a sport which is based on ordinary bowling, but use a frozen turkey as a bowling ball and 10 plastic bottles of soft drinks or water as the bowling pins.
That sounds like a lot of fun.
Yeah, stupid fun, but fun.
Huh.
Okay, name any other country that borders the country Turkey. Which has nothing to do with Turkey's
No,
the
it doesn't. Okay, I can't. My geography is off, but I can tell you that the country Turkey used to be called Anatolia, and that's all the geography I have right now.
Well, answers may vary on the countries, but Iran, Iraq, Syria, Greece, several others.
Oh my goodness, of course. Okay.
Right. What type of alcohol is the brand Wild Turkey?
I don't know. It's either bourbon or whiskey.
I would accept either answer. Yep.
Okay.
You're right. There is a myth that which founding father wanted the turkey to be the national bird of the U.S.?
Oh, Benjamin Franklin.
You got it. That's
Yeah.
3. All right. What brand of turkey is the best seller in the U.S.?
Butterball.
You got it. Right. It all comes down to this final question.
Oh, goodness.
All right. The wild turkey is a domesticated bird native to the Americas. The turkey shares this distinction with which other species of bird?
Domesticated but native to the Americas.
Yes.
Oh, my goodness. I have no idea. Is it the game chicken?
No. I'll be nice and give you one more.
Okay, give me a hint.
It is a waterfowl.
Muscovy duck.
That's right.
Yes, of course.
All right. You get to have the title Arkansas Turkey Queen.
Thank goodness. Thank goodness you guys don't have to hear me gobble like a turkey.
Unless you want to.
I do not.
Fair enough. Okay. Well, this was a great program, as always. And our next program is on Sunday, March 8th at the same time, 2 p.m. And it's all about alligators. So what can they expect to learn in a nutshell?
I think it's going to be on May 8th. And I think you said March, unless I heard that wrong.
I said I meant May if I said March.
That's okay. It'll be next month. It'll be in May.
They both start with
so alligators are my favorite animal. They are native to Arkansas. They are the largest reptile and they're a game species. And harvesting an alligator is on my bucket list. You've got to get started with your plans to harvest an alligator in the summer. And I'll talk all about that, the steps you need to take if you want to harvest one, what to do if you want to just see one, why you should probably be scared of them. We'll just talk about all kind of cool stuff to do with alligators.
Excellent. Looking forward to it. And are there any other events or anything Game and Fish is having that you'd like to give a shout out to?
So we're still neck deep in shotgun shooting season, and so until that is over with, my brain is nowhere else. So hopefully we'll start doing some fun stuff this summer, and maybe next month I can share some of our summer programming that we're going to do here at Grandview with you guys.
Sounds good. All right. Well, thank you everyone for watching, and be sure and share this video with anyone who might want to learn more about turkeys. Thanks, Casey.
Thanks. Bye.